do remember on the Brits, I did the Brits one year. I was lucky enough to do that. And the Brits is, you have this huge break because the dress run finishes at sort of 4:30, and then the show's not on till 8 o'clock or something, because they've got to load all of the people in, feed them all. And I remember it was very surreal going down to the floor with all these people having a right old knees up, eating dinner and getting drunk. And I was sitting there going, oh my God, in 2 hours I'm going to be directing this show. And it was really, I really had to have a word with myself and just go for a quiet walk and just take a few deep breaths.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our free online training. Thanks for joining us today for our afternoon craft workshop with multicam directors Nikki Parsons and Clare.
Hi there.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone. Hi, I'm Liz, and I'll give you a little just overview of what I do, where I work. So I'm currently the director of The Voice UK and The Voice Kids UK. I was due to be directing a new light entertainment show for BBC, the Little Mix search show, but that's been sadly postponed to the autumn. And I'm hoping that I'll be back directing the EMAs in October. So Nikki, over to you.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm currently the director of Strictly Come Dancing. I'm also dancing on ice for ITV. I was due to be doing the Britain's Got Talent live shows, which have also been postponed. And supposedly also directing So You Think You Can Dance for Fox TV in the summer, but that's still very much up in the air. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our background to start off with, and then we're going to go into some detail about how we actually go about doing our jobs. Just to start off with, I'll tell you a bit about how I got into TV. I went to a performing arts college, and then when I left, I decided I didn't want to be in front of the camera like now. And I then applied for lots of runners' jobs, and eventually I found myself at MTV. And MTV at the time was a great company to work in, and you could try any job you wanted to. So I went in as a script supervisor, and then I was an AP, and then eventually persuaded them that I needed to be a multi-camera director. I became a multi-camera director at MTV, which is where I learned how to be a director. So no formal training, it was just all learning on the job. How about you, Liz?
Yeah, fairly similar. Again, no formal training. I was at university doing classics, and left university in Leeds and managed to get a job working in Factual, actually, as I got a job as a production assistant and then a researcher. But I had some mates who were living in Hong Kong, and after a couple of years I decided it was going to be more fun going to Hong Kong. So my route into multicam came via Hong Kong. I moved over there and, like you, got a job working for a music channel. Thrown in at the deep end, found myself directing a 3-camera studio, pre-recorded mostly, but again had to learn how to manage a small gallery with a team of people very quickly, writing my own scripts and directing the show. And then came back to the UK after 3 years there and managed to get a job at Nickelodeon, and then applied for a job back in the day when they used to advertise jobs, TV jobs, in the Media Guardian. I actually applied for a job in the Media Guardian for a job at T4, which at the time was hosted by Dermot and Margarita on Channel 4 every Sunday. And so I was interviewed by Andy Peters and remarkably got the job. And he was amazing. And actually that was a real game changer, because that little world was so energetic. It was just full of young people, all sort of keen to get on, learn, make mistakes, but we learned so much. And he was brilliant. Andy was amazing. He's so enthusiastic and so knowledgeable, and he sort of pretty much taught me kind of everything I know now about sort of managing a busy live gallery, and crucially camera scripting music, which I know you're going to talk about in a bit, but that was kind of the game changer then, really. And that allowed me to then go on and do sort of more formatted stuff like CDUK. And I know I covered you a couple of times, Nikki, on a few things in there. But it was a long time, really, until I got it was still another 10 years till I got my big break on The Voice, which was back in 2013. So it was a good 10 years graph from T4 to that point. It didn't come quickly.
No, it takes a long time, doesn't it? And you
Yeah.
you do so many different jobs. I mean, I can't remember half of the things that I've done on my CV even.
Yeah.
So you just, but the more you do, I find that you're always learning. There's always something you've not done before. There's always a new challenge. There's always,
And it's so much about trust. And people often say, you know, how are you supposed to get your first break on, you know, primetime television, when, you know, because there's a reluctance, isn't there, to sort of try people who've never done it before or never taken that big step. But like you say, it's just being around and doing more and more stuff and just showing that you've got a breadth of experience and flying hours, really, isn't it? It's just trusting somebody that they've had enough time in live galleries that they can manage it.
Yeah, and like you say, you met Andy Peters and he helped you through, and that was a really good grounding for you. And there were lots of executive producers and series producers that just gave me my next step up and put their trust in me. I don't know, no idea why, but I think the more that they do that, the more confident you become, and then your career just slowly kind of edges up. And I think my big thing was I did a Celebrity Big Brother. And Izzy Pick at the time was working on that, and she was about to go and work on a dance show at the BBC. So the first job I did at the BBC was Strictly Dance Fever. So Strictly Come Dancing had already started, and it was like another show. So then Richard Hopkins and Karen Smith and Izzy Pick kind of gave me my opportunity to direct a big BBC live show, which was huge for me. So, and then from there, it's kind of gone a bit, upwards, really.
People, aren't there, that you come across through your career, and then they'll pop up somewhere and sort of give you that chance. Mine was Moira Ross, that who's managed to take me under her wing and give me that shot on The Voice. So that was good.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
So do you want to go on? Do you want to talk a bit about scripting?
Yeah. So well, should we just talk about how we go about starting in a production?
Sorry.
Running order, Liz.
Jumping ahead, I missed that item on the running order. Sorry.
So just so you know, we put together a little running order earlier and had a little rehearsal because we were quite nervous about running this event.
Paranoid at all.
No, and we like to be in control. So Liz, just tell, how would you go about starting a production? So at the very early stages, is it set meetings? Is it putting together a camera plan?
Well, I'll use The Voice as an example. So back in, I can't remember when it was now, but 4 series ago, The Voice moved from BBC to ITV, and happily they asked if I'd go with it. And it was a really lovely opportunity for myself to work with a new creative team. So they brought in a new set designer, Dom Tovds, and a new lighting designer, Dave Davey. And we were able to, it was really collaborative. We worked as a really lovely team, putting together some ideas. Myself, having worked on the previous series, I was able to sort of inform them with sort of ideas that hadn't worked, or ideas I liked, and we sort of worked together to put together a design. So Dom produces these wonderful models, and we'd sat down very early on. Dom had decided to go for a sort of more circular look to the set. So this was his actual physical model that we looked at. So from there, he'll produce lots of visuals that will help me, inform me about how I'm going to then fill this with cameras and how we're going to shoot it. So he would produce these lovely sort of pre-visuals of the set, and we would, myself and then my camera supervisor Nat Hill, would sit down and work out how we were going to shoot it. And it was very early on we decided we definitely needed some kind of overhead aerial shot. It's such a beautiful set, so we knew that we needed something, and we decided to, so here's our original plan. This is dated last year, but it hasn't changed a huge amount since the beginning. So we put in a new tracking system, aerial tracking system, which is camera 17 there on that plan, just so that we could make the most of the set. And one of ITV's big briefs was to give it more scale and a bit of ITV sparkle, and we just wanted to make it just feel more of a live event. So we put camera 17 in. That was new. A lot of the other cameras are just informed by the set in terms of, we know that we're going to have 4 cameras shooting the coaches both directions. So in fact 8 of those cameras are just there, that they have to be there. There's nothing that, it's just geometry. 4 of them are built into a raised platform. 12, 13, 14, 15 are built raised, shooting back to the coaches once they've turned. And then when the chairs are facing the audience, 2, 3, 4 and 5 are those close-ups from the floor, their heads working on their hi-hats, shooting back towards the coaches there. So those are a given. You need all of those 8 cameras. And everything else sort of falls into place. You know, you want some scale on one side. So we've got camera 7 was a jib that's built on a platform, which I think you probably had that when you were doing it, Nikki, as well. It's a beautiful shot. And then you've got various PEDs on the floor that allow you to pick up these lovely down the line sort of reaction shots. So you've got you've got camera 8 and 10 there that will shoot down the line of the coaches and get the lovely reaction shots between them as they're deliberating, deciding to turn, button presses. We also put in a new camera. We put in a big proscenium arch wide shot at the back of the hall, just because I really enjoyed seeing those sorts of shots, and to be able to have that all the time without having to rely on a camera going in for a close-up and then coming back out. So we did add a sort of cross arch wide, and then we put in camera 19, which is a little P1 that was just built into the stairs to give us a static foreshot of the coaches at all times, which they play with in the edit. You can speed up, it's a lock off, they can do all sorts with it. So it's been a really nice little addition. So that was kind of how we came to it, and that's our aerial shot from the dolly that we got in the end, that just gives us all that scale, and it became a really beautiful sort of shot that lots of other territories took up as well. In fact, America then put one in, and so did Australia. So it's become quite a kind of emblematic shot of the voice. So yeah, we were pleased we did that. And then that's just a live plan, which there's slightly less cameras on there because the coaches' chairs don't turn. So we go from 18 cameras down to 15 cameras for the live shows, and we gained camera 12, which was a movie bird at the bottom there. Just to when we get to the lives, it's scripted, so there's much less, we need less coverage because everything is scripted, the shots are scripted, we know our place, it's much more formulaic, so we can do it with less cameras. So that's kind of how we planned. We had to do a bit of a sales job, to be honest. So when we first started planning, we went back to a big technical planning meeting. And it was there that we sort of dropped the news that we'd like this new camera. It was going to be expensive, and it was going to be more than we'd budgeted before. But they made the figures work because we sold the shot to the producers, and they could see that it was going to be, you know, just such a lovely trademark shot that they use so much. And in fact, we've ended up designing the graphics on the floor to suit the shot too. So there's a lot of aerial graphics now that we have to capture overhead. And so it's kind of really brought the show on. So the producers were quite happy in the end to spend the money, or find the money to spend.
Do you prefer camera scripting or busking a performance? What's your preference, or does it depend on?
I think it depends on the situation. Yeah, like you know that there will be times when either you have no information, so you have to assume that you're going to have to busk it. But there are also times, I mean, when I do the EMAs, it's actually sort of almost 60% scripted, 40% busk. There'll be 3 or 4 performances that will be a busk, either because you don't have the information or because you just feel that actually you're going to capture the energy of it so much better if you let your cameramen and women do their thing, which is to find you all these beautiful shots and to capture it as it happens and to sort of get the feeling of the moment. Plus, you know, you quite often get artists, if it's one single artist, we had Halsey on the EMAs, and she did it differently every single time. It was just her. It wasn't a very elaborate, it was quite an elaborate setup, but it wasn't a very complicated sort of choreography. And I just knew it was just going to be easier it was very simple. It was probably only about 15 shots, but it was just easier just to bust because she would just do it all differently every time. And if I scripted it, it would just be a nightmare. We'd end up unpicking ourselves and busking it anyway, and then we'd be unprepared. So it was much better just to plot it through, busk it, know exactly where the sort of, we knew what her sort of key moments were, so we knew where we had to change the dynamic, and we had already plotted in those main wide shots. But Sometimes it's just easier just to busk it.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you?
I prefer camera scripting because I am a control freak and I like to know exactly where we are, what we're doing. But as you say, sometimes you have no idea, and also it's an ever-changing performance sometimes, so you just have to follow the action. And if you're doing a covering a live event that you don't have a rehearsal for, then you have to go with the flow. And also, like you say, you get more of the energy sometimes, so you can pick up the energy of the crowd and what's going on in the space. But I like camera scripting, and particularly on the talent shiny floor shows that we do, because they are particularly on dancing. I like to make sure that I've captured everything from the best angle that I can to make the dancers look their best. And with choreography, fingers crossed, it shouldn't change unless something goes wrong and there's a mistake, but it shouldn't change. So I find it helps. And also the rest of the team use your camera scripts to take their cues from. So lighting will take their cues from your script, and special effects take their cues. And sometimes on Strictly we have a massive piece of scenery that we start with in the foreground, and then magically that piece of scenery has to disappear. So then we'll push past that piece of scenery on the Steadicam or the crane, and then underneath during the performance, while we're looking at something else, we have to give the cue for the prop team to go in and strike the set. So and you say that's going to be on shot number 5. So on shot 5, everyone knows the guys are going in, they're striking the set, and then by shot 10 you can go wide again. They know it kind of it's a good structure. So you should be able to see the camera script from Strictly Come Dancing, and I'll just go through with you what you're seeing at this point. So with my cursor, that's a shot number. So that's shot number 1, shot number 2, and shot number 3. These numbers here refer to the camera numbers. So that's shot 7, shot 2, camera 7, camera 2, and camera 5, ongoing. And underneath here is the shot description. So it's on shot 1, camera 7 is off center to camera right, and he's got a reverse over shoulder shot of Pasha and Ashley watching a movie in the screen downstage. That's a very complicated description for like a voiceover to 1 beat. And down here is the duration of the shot. So that's the voiceover and 1 beat of music. And then on the first bar of music, we change to shot 2 on camera 2, and that's a mid 2 shot to a full 2 shot. And then that continues all the way through the performance. Now this performance has got about, I think it's got 19 shots, and the Strictly performances are about 1.5 minutes. So it averages between say 15 to 20 shots per performance. And what happens is during the rehearsals, we get sent a wide shot of the rehearsal, and then I watch that rehearsal, and then on a music breakdown that the script supervisor has sent me, I break that down into shots and beats and bars, and say where I want my cut points to be and what I want the cameras to do. And then that's made into this lovely document by the script supervisor. It sounds very complicated, but it's very, once you get used to hearing it, it kind of helps everybody know where they are. So camera 2 knows that he's got that shot for a bar and 3 beats, and then it goes to camera 5. So everybody, it's like choreography for cameras.
And how do you set about planning it, Nikki? When you start, do you work through the piece of music and the choreography step by step, or do you mark in sort of key changes where you'd like to get certain shots? How do you do it?
I tend to watch the whole thing through a couple of times, so I get to know what the choreographer intended with their dance. So sometimes you have a breakdown of, or you've had a conversation with the choreographer, or you have a creative document, but quite often you're just given a wide shot of a dance, and then you have to make sense of it. So I watch it a few times to try and make sense of what I'm seeing, and then the second time through I'm watching it, I'm thinking at this point there'll probably be a big lighting change, so I'll need to be on a wide shot to see the lighting change, and then I'll work out when I need where I want the crane to go and the technicrane move to be, where I want the Steadicam to come on. So all the big kind of moving shots I'll have an idea of, and then very slowly I'll go through and stop and start the rehearsal video, which is just a wide shot, and mark the shots on the paper. So eventually when I get to the end of it, I've got a whole performance. And in my head, I'm always thinking, I need to catch their personality as well, because it's a kind of talent reality competition. So you want to see how they're reacting with each other, and if something's really difficult for them, can you see that in their faces, or can you see that they're having fun? And then obviously there's footwork. I always need to see footwork, and this is all particular to Strictly, basically. So and then obviously there's a huge amount of production value that goes into the graphics and the set pieces and pyrotechnics. So I've always got to make sure that I'm on the right shot to capture that as well. So even though it looks just like a page of numbers, there's a lot of thought that's gone into putting that onto paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is on the kind of shows that I work on and Liz works on. It's something you can learn, though. It's not an impossible task. I'm not a musician. I don't play any instruments or anything, but I think maybe my dance background helped me with the choreography, so that has helped. But yeah, I think some kind of musicality does help on the shows that we work on.
And a rhythm, don't you? You sort of need to have, and a sense of it, and being able to sort of the interpretation, which I know sounds a bit knobby, but it's being able to sort of take it and feel it, and kind of, do you know what I mean? Which I know most people do get sort of emotional about music, but that's that sort of feeling. But you like you say, you don't have to be able to read music necessarily, but you do have to have an understanding. Well, certainly not for the stuff we do. There is music, obviously, camera scripting, where you do need to be able to read a score, and it's done very differently to the way we do this. So on something like the EMAs, the voice in the EMAs would work quite differently. On the voice, we have a single creative director, Jerry Reeve, who's brilliant, and it's his job to conceive all of the looks on the voice live shows once it gets to the sort of semi-finals and the finals, and he's also sort of responsible for coming up with some of the graphic looks. So that is a sort of slightly different setup to something like the EMAs, where every artist comes with their own creative director. Quite often we do have a show creative director who can be offered up as as somebody to come up with a concept, but most of them bring their own. And it's a very different sort of relationship. The creative directors are given a sort of a design deck of our studio and our space, along with a camera plan, with pre-visual visions of each. They can previs each camera. They can see where the cameras are, what the lens is, and the sort of shots they can get. So then they'll go away, come up with a concept, and quite often we get back then visuals which give you an indication of how they see their performance. This was for a Dua Lipa performance that we did on the EMAs last year, and so these are some of the early images that we were given that sort of indicated kind of what the setup was, how many dancers were involved, where they were going to be on stage, at least at the beginning of the performance. This then did develop, and I was given a full access to choreography. I was invited to go to a rehearsal space where they'd built this deck, so that this was a big deck built behind a screen. The screens were open to reveal this deck, and that's an overhead view of the deck just to show the depth and its position. So they built a replica of that. I went along to the studio, I was able to see the rehearsals, and then from that I was able to plot a music script, a camera script. And they would give me various sort of visual references, colour references, so I could sort of see where they were going. That was an early one, and in fact it changed very quickly to that, which with Dua Lipa in the middle. And in fact they wanted to originally go for projection, but it turned into a sort of colour wash, lighting colour wash. And in fact the whole thing developed quite a lot, even when we got to the room, when we were in rehearsals. You will spend a lot of time in those situations talking to the artist, talking to the creative director, things. So that's that kind of relationship. When it's more in-house and it's the voice, you get given, it becomes a much more collaborative sort of relationship in terms of the whole creative team will be involved. So Dom in terms of design, Dave and lighting, and then Jerry will come with some early ideas, which we'll discuss, pick, you know, together with the producers, we'll pick some of our favourite ideas, things that we think will work. We always have to keep in mind change over time. So we have 1 minute 40 VT. So anything that's designed has to physically be able to get on the set in 1 minute 40. So all of this has to be taken into account. But I'll get given something a bit like that as a mood board, so I kind of know what his direction is, what he's imagining it will look like, what the lighting might look like, and a brief description of the kind of the flow of the performance. I was given, I didn't have a recording rehearsal tape of this, but I was given a breakdown of her movement. This was Molly on the final of The Voice. So it was really simple but beautiful. It was a really beautiful design. And so from that, I was able just to break it down and do a camera script. And I knew that there were key points I had to try and get. I really wanted to try and capture that first image there on we had to try and replicate that really, because it was such a stunning image. And then within that, I knew that he wanted to have a Steadicam moment within the drum, and that there was going to be this sort of shadow effect. So all of that we had to really plot through very carefully and try and make sure it would work within the, you know, with the lighting and the set and everything. So it was quite painstaking. Once we were on set, we kind of figured a lot of it out.
Me, myself personally, I'm not a technical director. I rely on my very talented team around me to know technical things. But I think as a director, you need a rough understanding of what everybody else does. And I think that's a very good way to learn your job as well, is to spend some time with every single department. So you've got an idea of what that department are up against, what they're trying to achieve. And so when you're directing, it's not all about you. It's about your whole team, and you're all working to the same end product. And so it helps to have some knowledge about every single person's department. But I don't necessarily think that you need a big technical background to be a director.
It's a really key, you know, I mean, quite often I sort of think they ought to be called ADs, actually, personally, because what they do is essentially they're your associate director. They're next to you. They, you know, it depends if it's scripted, then, you know, they're preparing all your scripts. They're also, I mean, I work with a lot of different script supervisors, but some of them are a second pair of eyes a lot of the time as well. And quite often when you're concentrating on something very specific, they're very good at overseeing other stuff that's going on. And quite often I've been given a nudge or a point, you know, pointed out that something's happening, or, you know, they're brilliant. And it's a really close relationship. You've really got to get on. You spend an awful lot of time together. You quite often understand each other without even having to say anything, and they've really got your back. And so I think it's really important that you develop a very strong relationship with that person. And when it's a busk, they're still as critical to the success. Yeah. You know, in fact, almost more so, because they're sort of driving it. But yeah, it's very important relationship.
There was a scriptwriter at the BBC, and then recently we've been using Adobe Story, but that's license is finished. It's gone. So currently there is a script package under development, and we're all hoping that by the time we get out of lockdown, it'll be fully developed and ready to use. So currently there isn't a particular script package that we're using.
So if I've written essays in particularly Steadicam, and you kind of go, they just want to know a direction and a rotation, but I write little mini essays and put little smiley faces and like little jokes embedded in it to see if they notice. But
yeah, I do exactly the same. I think that, like Liz says, they just want very short, sharp, to the point instructions, whereas I think it's Steadicam, Technocrane, sometimes you do tend to write, then you need to see a big close-up of this, and then you need to go over here, and then you need to do this, and then and literally all they want is, oh, hang on, I'll do that. They kind of want, they want something like that, rather than your essay that you've written them. But yeah, short and to the point is always best, because they've got to read that live. So I think if you do write a long shot description, that then they'll annotate it anyway. So.
Exactly. And actually,
or just ignore you.
Or ignore it, exactly. And actually what they really want, they just want a frame size, a starting point and an end point. And it's up to them then to find, there's no point kind of giving them references behind the act or things that you want to try and, unless there is something that you want to see in the background, it's better just to let the cameraman find the nicest mid shot that they can, or the most beautiful close-up they can, rather than being too specific about which angle you want it taken from or anything. I think it's more just about the frame size, and then leave them to, you sort of, you know, let their juices flow, because they are brilliant. I mean, they will find shots that you couldn't even think, you know, imagine. So sort of let them do some of the work because they're good at it.
I wouldn't say being a female has had any difference, made any difference to how I direct, really. I'm just me, and I just direct as me. I don't pretend to be anything else. I've never come across any issues, really. Not I've worked in the States a couple of times, and I find that a little bit more challenging. But here, not at all, not really throughout my career. Maybe when I was starting, but I think because I was quite young when I started directing, it wasn't because I was a female that people didn't trust me. It was just because I was new and I didn't really know what I was doing. So it's nothing to do really with being male or female in our job, I think. And there's a lot of brilliant male and female directors around. Do you agree?
I would agree 100%, Nikki. Yeah. It's harder now. I would agree that Nikki and I were very lucky. We benefited from that sort of, there was endless continuity being made by all these digital channels, and they needed people to direct them, and they used to have all these big fully functioning studios. You know, MTV had its own studio. I mean, they still do, but they're not really making any live content anymore, and same with Nickelodeon. So we were very lucky. But I guess, I don't know, Nikki, what do you
well, Liz is mentoring at the moment, aren't you? So Directors UK run a mentors scheme, but there's the National Film and Television School runs a 2-year master's course in television direction and production. But I think the Directors UK would be a good organisation to get in touch with, and they'd be able to point you in the right direction.
I would definitely recommend joining Directors UK as well. Even if they've got student rates, haven't they? Or you know, you don't have to be a director, I don't think, do you, to be a member?
I'm not sure, but they're a great organisation, and it's just
Yeah, and they're planning to run more I would say get a mentor, and it doesn't have to necessarily even be officially through anybody. If you can find somebody, you know, I've been lucky all through my career. I've found people who've given me so many opportunities and shown me, you know, be really generous with their time. And that's why I love mentoring. I'm mentoring someone at the moment who's working in, you know, has done multicam but at fixed rig, and has worked in news and wants to move into entertainment. And so it's really lovely to be able to get them into that environment and get them to see a big live entertainment sort of show studio working, and for them to sort of see it in action and ask questions and be involved. So I'd say mentoring is a really good way forward if you can find somebody willing to give you their time and expertise. You just want to immerse yourself, don't you? Really? I'd say I mean anywhere. You just want to get as much and just ask questions. I'd say this, if you are going to be a runner, the smartest runners are the ones that just ask questions, show a real interest in something. I mean, I've had runners that have worked with me on The Voice where they've been really, really sort of engaged and wanted to know about what we did and how we did it. And they've gone on now to, in fact, one of them was about 3 years ago, Hayley, my AD at the time on The Voice. This girl was a bit of a stalker, actually. Well, not a stalker, that's the wrong word. She was obsessed with Hayley because Hayley did the Super Bowl and she'd seen Hayley on YouTube, and so Hayley was a bit of a fangirl. So she asked Hayley lots and lots of questions about ADing, lots of questions about multi-camera, and as a result she just made herself very useful and understood what we needed. And as a result, Hayley got her a job on the EMAs the next year as her truck runner, and she's now sort of, I don't know, well actually I don't know where she is now, but she's still, I know she's still working, and but she just made herself sort of, you know, very useful and asked all the right questions.
Yeah, and I think that's the best, as a runner, you could just move through the departments and then you just ask as many questions as you can and be as helpful as you can. And that, I think that's the best way to learn what's going on in all departments, really.
Mm.
I guess it would, yeah, it would be useful. I wouldn't say that's a definite direct route. I mean, yes, it would be useful because you understand the art of directing. But I wouldn't say you had to be a single camera director before you became a multi-camera director at all.
I'd love to do the VMAs, but something like that, I'd love to do another big sort of award show, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I have done we both have worked for BBC events.
Oh yeah.
In the past, and I just absolutely love working on those productions, really, because you feel like you're being part of history, really.
Yeah.
That's I'd like to do more of that, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. Actually, that's lovely. Yeah. Those are beautiful. They're very privileged, those jobs, aren't they? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. When they come along, they are very special.
Yeah. So more of that would be great. But I'm just quite happy doing what I'm doing. I love my job. So. Yes.
Yeah, they're really pressured. I find them really pressured.
Yeah, because there's a lot of protocol to follow, particularly so if there's royals and VIPs attending the events, there's a lot of protocol you have to follow. It's a massive occasion. There's a lot of security. The whole world is normally watching those big events. So you're feeding the BBC, but then they're taking your feed to send around the world to other companies. So yeah, massive pressure.
And I think you've done some of the World War. You've done some sort of anniversaries, World War anniversaries. Yeah. And I think also in the back of your head the whole time. I remember I did one in Ypres. I did a Passchendaele anniversary, 100-year anniversary, and I felt I just wanted to do it justice for all the people who were there remembering their loved ones, and for the people who had given their lives. And there's this real weight. I mean, it's a real privilege, but I do remember getting very emotional before we went live, thinking, this is extraordinary, and I've got to get this right, and I've got to try and tell this story just to do it justice. So I think you do in a way that you don't perhaps, I mean, it's still important to get the voice final right because you're still telling a story, but I don't get that I'm not emotional when I start the voice final. No. I was very emotional doing the Passchendaele.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Well, you just go with the flow, and you have to keep in your mind. You just think it's only a live show. It's not life or death. We're just going to keep going. And I think you, your brain just takes over, and because you've been doing it for so long, you're on kind of autopilot, and so things just come out of your mouth that just automatically. So you just know what to do because you know the shows that you're working on, and you've had contingency chats, and you know what to do if this particular thing happens. So I think things that happen live while you're on air, it happens. People, and I think sometimes you're really scared that you don't want anything to go wrong, you want it to be perfect, but I think sometimes as an audience they like to see things going wrong. They like to see like a real thing happening. So like if the stage sometimes on Britain's Got Talent Live, you'd come back and the stage wasn't quite ready, or so you'd have to get the boys out, and the Ant and Dec would stand at the side and fill for like 20 seconds, but you can rely on your presenters. I would hate to be a presenter in that situation, but you can rely on those presenters just to stand there and do their thing. So I just think you just go with the flow, and your adrenaline just takes over. Is there any particular thing, Liz, that's happened, or is it?
I'm just trying to think. I'm sure will.i.am's pulled a few last minute changes on me in the past.
Yep.
There's always something, isn't there? There's always something that, we've had, I remember on The Voice Kids last year, we had some poor girl, she was the first singer, and the audience, Stuart Holdham, our warm-up, had done such an amazing job with the audience that she couldn't hear anything. So the poor band, and we've obviously got a live band on The Voice, and she didn't have in-ears. She was relying on the monitoring in the room, and she just didn't hear her cue at all and didn't start. And it's just one of those things you have, obviously you're sort of realizing it sort of feels like it's slow motion at the time. You watch it back and it was over in a second, but you realise she's not heard, so you've got to stop the band, you've got to send Emma in, Emma's got to do a link, you've got to reset and go again. And at the time you're thinking, oh my God, that must have been about 5 minutes. And then you watch it and in reality, it was very quick and sort of barely even noticed. And the audience like it because it shows it was live, she's singing live, the band are live, it kind of makes it more authentic.
So basically, we've all our productions have kind of ground to a halt. In the last couple of weeks, we've started to have conversations about how we're going to go forward with productions in a socially isolated manner, but nothing concrete yet at all. Just lots of kind of initial discussions. But basically, we've suddenly realised that our industry is quite precarious and we really don't have anything. So I think I was just about to start, we were both just about to start quite a long stretch of a series, mine for Netflix, Liz's for the BBC, and both of those just got pulled. So we're just waiting at the moment, but it is quite worrying. The kind of shows that we work on involve live audiences and like crews that could be up to like 300 people on a crew. So it's just, we're not quite sure how we're going to move forward, but hopefully we will, because it would be, it's such a shame because the shows that we work on, they're kind of family-based, entertaining shows that people want to watch, and it cheers people up. So we're hoping that slowly we can move forward and get out of this, but that we are having contingency chats, both of us, with the shows that we work on, about how to move forward, but currently nothing.
No, I mean, we're, like Nikki said, we're sort of chatting, we're still talking about, the last thing I managed to do just before lockdown was called on the Monday was record a Voice Kids semi-final, which we've done and is being cut, and then the final is due at the end of August. So at the moment, that's the first thing that we're in talks about, to try and see if we can make the Voice Kids final happen at the end of the summer where it was scheduled. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about and a lot to go through, and again, it was supposed to be live with an audience vote, so you can't, it's going to have to be pre-recorded now, but we've still got to get an audience vote to decide who's winning, who wins. So there's a lot of technicalities to go through about how we actually find a winner. So anyway, I'm going to jump in here, Nikki, because when I did So You Think You Can Dance for you that time, because you'd gathered off to America, and I think I did a couple of shows for you, I remember you left me a little bottle of Rescue Remedy on the front of the desk, and it's always stayed with me. And for the first few years, and in fact I used it on So You Think You Can Dance, and for a long time I used to use it just as a kind of, I'd have a real moment, and I always love, because usually quite often you'd have a big meal break before you go live, and I love those meal breaks because it just gives you a kind of pause and a time to reflect and take a few deep breaths and just kind of, take it all in and just go, it'll be okay. So I do love those meal breaks and a little bit of Rescue Remedy. But it is, sometimes I do remember on the Brits, I did the Brits one year, I was lucky enough to do that, and the Brits is, you have this huge break because the dress run finishes at sort of 4:30, and then the show's not on till 8 o'clock or something, because they've got to load all of the people in, feed them all. And I remember it was very surreal going down to the floor with all these people having a right old knees up, eating dinner and getting drunk. And I was sitting there going, oh my God, in 2 hours I'm going to be directing this show. And it was really, I really had to have a word with myself and just go for a quiet walk and just take a few deep breaths.
Yeah, so I still use Rescue Remedy.
Do you?
Yeah, it's just I think it's like a comfort blanket, really. It is. It just kind of breathe and then you're off. And I'm the opposite. I hate those meal breaks. I'd rather just get on and do it. Yeah. So just having a quiet word with yourself, definitely.
Yeah.
And also on Strictly, as the titles are running, to get the energy going, the whole gallery kind of claps along and dances to the title music, just to kind of get over the nerves and get your adrenaline up and ready to go.
Yeah. I would say, I would do a lot of stuff out of Salford in Manchester. I don't know much about Bristol, I have to confess, but I know certainly Voice Kids is a regional production now, and there are certainly more opportunities up at Doc 10 and Salford to sort of get involved if that is if you do want to go down that road. There's and in fact, Salford University, right next to Doc 10, runs lots of broadcast courses, and I've met lots of students there who've come over and spent time with me in the gallery there. And so I think the North, Manchester particularly, I think is probably a really good place to go, if you are based in the Northwest, to sort of investigate Doc 10 and the opportunities there, and the BBC's obviously there. But Doc 10's getting very busy, and they're making a lot of stuff up there now. And I know Leeds has obviously got some broadcast hubs now again as well. But
thanks everyone for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you.